The presentation I can share from my equipment.
Sure, you can. Feel free to share it from your computer, no problem.
Okay.
We will introduce you and then you can share it, okay?
Okay, perfect.
Right. No problem.
I'm going to exit and come back in again because Zoom is playing up on my computer for some reason. So I'll be back in a second.
Okay, Julia, no problem. Okay, good morning. So it's 10 a.m. Central European Time. It's time to start with today's webinar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are connected with us today. But to all of you, welcome to attend today's Skillman webinar. Today, we'll be talking about teachers training needs analysis. And first of all, let me just give a special thanks to the European Training Foundation for their help and contribution in the organization of today's webinar. Also, thank you very much to our speakers who will be presenting in just a while. And thanks all for being here and participating to the webinar. Just a quick, I'll take some time to give some quick instructions about how the webinar is going to work. You can see it on your screen anyways. All the participants now are muted and have their cameras switched off by default. We would, of course, like to have your contribution and your engagement throughout the whole webinar. So you will be able to ask your questions and add your comments for all the speakers that will be speaking in just a while. Please do so with the Q&A button that you see in your bottom bar here. You would just click on that button and you will have a pop-up window where you can actually ask your questions. You can do that throughout the whole time of the webinar. Today's format will be that after each presentation, we will have a 10-minute space for Q&A. So during that time, your questions and comments will be addressed directly to the speakers. Alternatively, you can also raise your hand if you want to ask your questions in person, and we will open your microphone. So either ways are fine with us. Okay, just a quick introduction. My name is Valentina De Vico. I am the communication manager of the Skillman team. And today I'm surrounded by quite a few gentlemen with me. So let's just move on and give the overview of the speakers that will be addressing the topic today. First of all, Filippo Del Nino, specialist in back policies and systems of the European Training Foundation, will be introducing the European Training Foundation and their scope of work. After him, Julian Stanley, vet teachers and training and trainer specialist, also from the European Training Foundation, will be getting more in detail about the topics of today. And during the second part of the webinar, we will have two examples of centers of vocational excellence. The first with Klas Talvid, the coordinator of Hälsingland Education Association in Sweden. And lastly, we will have Narcis Bosch, the director of the Chambers of Commerce of Catalonia, who will share his experience from the perspective of Spain. First of all, I would just like to give from my side a very quick introduction of the Skillman team as organizer of today's webinar. And I thought it would be interesting also to share some highlighted numbers of the network. So the numbers, you can see them on your screen right now. The Skillman team is a very broad international network around which we introduce and exchange skills. And it was founded the network was founded in 2014, but since then it got really broad. And right now we count more than 600 members coming from 300 regions in 93 countries all over the world. We also have more than 50 ambassadors coming from different backgrounds, but mostly TVET providers, policymakers, individuals, centers of vocational excellence, and companies who spread the principles of the Skillman network around the world. Last year, in 2020, we created 4 peer learning clubs, those focus groups of 208 experts. And with them, we published 4 position papers, all rounding about TVET topics. We have been implementing a lot of activities and a lot of events. of which 18 webinars on EU funding opportunities. Our seminars were embedded in the EU Skills Week. We have endorsed the Pass for Skills and so on. Now, we continue to try and engage our stakeholders around the world, especially in our annual conference, the Skillman International Forum, that last year hosted 470 delegates. So the numbers are pretty impressive, and we continue to do this work in the future. As you see here, I just put a geographical map to just give a very quick overview of the geographical range of our members. Again, more than 600 members from 93 countries. And the Skillman activities are embedded in the Skillnet project, the project co-funded by the European Commission, whose strategy is to develop a large network of centers of vocational excellence. We cooperate with many international organizations, the Assembly of European Regions, IVESA, the International Vocational Education and Training Association, EAPRIL, and as I mentioned, the European Training Foundation, whose top experts are with us today to present the topic. Just a last remark before giving the floor to the first speaker. I would like to invite all of you to join our peer learning clubs. My colleague Julia is sharing with you the link in the chat. Because the topics of discussions of today will be taken back after the webinar, also in those groups. So if you wish to continue the discussion on the topics that we addressed today, please join one of the 4 peer learning clubs. Again, the links are in the box. If you have any difficulties following the webinar here on Zoom, you can also follow on our streaming channel, the Skillman.eu channel. And as a last thing on my side, we really value your feedback. So please evaluate the quality of the webinar by clicking on this link or scanning this QR code. Again, Julia, if you can share the link in the chat box, please do it now. And without any further delay, I would just leave the floor to our first speaker, Filippo Del Nino, specialist in vet policies and systems from the European Training Foundation. So if you want, the floor is yours, Filippo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vale. I hope you can hear me. My name is Filippo Del Nino. I work for the European Training Foundation. I'll just give you a couple of words about ETF and our ETF Network for Excellence, and then we will engage in a few questions for having an interactive session, and then I will give the word to my colleague Julian. The ETF is the European Training Foundation, is an agency of the European Union, and our mandate is to support human capital development reforms in countries outside the European Union. We have established in 2020 the ETF Network for Excellence. Is a network of almost 100 central vocational excellence from Southern Mediterranean countries, Western Balkan, Eastern Partnership, and Central Asia. In the context of ENE, we have established a number of partnerships with different organizations, and the partnership with Skillman is one of the most important ones. In the context of this partnership, we have a program of 12 webinars in the areas of teacher training, work-based learning, and digitalization in education. We started by the end of 2020, and we will continue until the end of 2021. So this webinar is in the context of this program. We will have additional 3 webinars for teacher training, and you will receive the invitation for all of these. I go straight to a couple of questions for you before launching the presentation of Julian, because we really want to focus on Julian's intervention and the 2 cases of best practice, and to leave as much as possible time for your questions and answers. If we cannot address all your questions and answers during this session, we will try to reply in writing to you and submit all the answers to you by email. So Vale, if you can post quickly the questions. The questions are simply yes or no, so it's not complicated. You can reply relatively quickly, but they will allow us to have an idea of the situation in the participating Center of Excellence to the webinar. So the first one is quite simple. Is basically, does the School of Central Vocational Access have a dedicated budget for training? This is meant to have an idea about the level of autonomy of the center. Again, it's just a yes or no answer so that you can actually go through this question quickly. Okay, Vale, can you show already the result? Okay, so only around 50% of the answers actually do have a specific budget for training. I'm curious to see how in the questions answers how the others are actually dealing with it, how much centralized it is. So this is quite interesting. So next question.
Second question is coming. There you go.
So the question is, does the school have dedicated staff for identifying and addressing workforce development needs? This is an important one because, I mean, this is actually something that requires time and expertise. And I mean, it's something that's quite necessary, especially for central vocational access, who actually does have the autonomy for managing their own resources in terms of training needs analysis and teacher training activities. Okay, even in these cases around 50-50, so it's interesting to see, I mean, how this in the schools which do not have this actually profile, things can actually be managed. Next question.
Next question coming.
Does the school organize placements every year in enterprises where teachers can refresh or extend their professional skill? This is a specific question on the technical competences of teachers. So for teachers who actually go to companies so that the technical profile gets updated to the requirements of labor market, but it's also a question about the relationship between the school and the enterprises. So it's interesting for us to see to what extent you have this partnership with enterprises also for teacher training. Okay, so mainly this is interesting. This also means that probably teacher training activities mainly refer to pedagogical training, or that it's done through provision of training, but not through placement in enterprise. So it's going to be interesting to see. I think Julian will elaborate on this. Do we have a fourth question, I think, or yeah, so
Yes,
we
we
have a
do.
last question and then. Okay, this is a bit more technical, but it just says, did at least 75% of teachers in Center of Excellence receive some training over the last 12 months? This is a question that we have taken from ETF methodology for mapping the Center of Excellence part of ENE on a number of thematic areas. One of these is teacher training. So we wanted just to put one of the questions we have, and the question really refers to the percentage of teachers who actually receive continuing professional development in the last 12 months. This is a quite ambitious target, so I would not be surprised if the majority of answers is negative, but again, it's going to be interesting to see. Again, this is more reasonable. I mean, it was actually an ambitious target, but again, almost 20% confirmed that the vast majority of teachers received continued professional training in the last 12 months. So for those 20% of central vocational excellence, that's quite a good result. So thank you very much for replying to our questions and providing us some food for thoughts. And I'll pass the word to Julian for the introductory presentation. Thank you very much, Julian.
I hope people can hear me. Please, someone confirm that you can hear me. I've got a slight problem in that I'm having to speak to you by way of my telephone because my computer's played up a little bit. And I'm rather hoping, as I've sent my presentation to Valentina, that she is going to play the presentation for me while I speak by telephone.
I haven't received any email.
Valentina
I'll be
could
glad to
confirm
do it.
that.
Julian, I haven't received any email from you. Otherwise, I would be glad to share it for you.
Okay, I've sent it also to Filippo and to Florian, so maybe one of them could do it. I sent it to all three.
Can I please ask you, Julian, to just move your microphone a little bit away because we can hear you very strongly. Okay.
Vale, I forwarded you the presentation now.
Wonderful.
Otherwise, you can share it if you want, Filippo.
So long as somebody can share it.
I can share it. I can share it.
You share it for me, please.
I can
speed
share
it up.
it.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem, Julian.
Just a second, I'm opening it.
Okay.
Marvelous. Well done. Teamwork.
Teamwork, yes, don't worry.
Teamwork. So while Filippo's doing that, perhaps I could just say a few words. I'm a specialist at the ETF who works has been working on teachers and teacher development for some time. We've done a number of surveys to try and find out patterns of professional development across the countries where ETF works. We've recently done a survey across 9 different countries to find out about professional development. And we've also more recently done a survey to find out how schools and teacher development has been coping with the challenges of COVID. And some of what I say today will be drawn from those surveys. So it's based upon what we know from teachers directly about the experiences that they've been having. One of the kind of general points I want to make is captured a little bit in the title, which is the idea that it's important to think about professional development for vocational teachers and trainers, but we also have to think about the school as a whole, not just the teachers as individuals who are progressing pedagogically, vocationally, not just at a system, at a national level, about meeting national goals for more teachers who can do this, more teachers who can do that. But we also need to think about the school, how a school is coordinating the professional development of the whole of its workforce, what goals it's setting, what it's prioritizing, because I think it's important that the school, that we recognize that how much a school can contribute and how important it is that the school is really supporting the professional development of all those who work in it. Okay, next slide, please. Can I ask you to go to the next slide and we'll come back in a second? Okay, so here's oops, too far. Back one, please.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So here's a picture. Here's 2 images of professional development. And on your left, you see a conventional workshop. Teachers from a number of schools have been called together to be briefed, to receive knowledge about something, a change in the curriculum perhaps, or a new method of assessment. On the right, you see a group of teachers in a school who are being supported by a more expert teacher on a task. Now, both of these have a form of learning. Both of these have a value. But I think you can see from the faces and from the body reactions of the people involved, which is the situation where people are in the flow, which is the situation where they're alert to learning something, which is going to be of value to a task they're preparing, to some teaching that they're going to do. There's a real engagement there because they want to learn, because they're doing something they've engaged in. On the left, in the large seminar, they're engaged, they're sharing informally. It's a day out from school. And I don't think there's the prospect of really intensive professional learning, which is actually going to change their practice. And I think we have to reflect a little bit about the amount of professional development that we do, which looks like the left, and the amount that we do, which looks like the right, and how maybe we can shift a little bit more from the left to the right. If we can go back a slide, please. Okay, so I think what I'd like to reflect on a little bit is how generally professionals learn, including teachers. And I think the key thing to remember about this is that, teachers are already experts. Many of them will have had years of practice. They will know what they're doing. They will have established styles and modes of working, and they have some confidence in what they do. If they didn't have confidence, they wouldn't be able to do it as well as they do. Now, if that's your starting position, you're not going to learn by somebody giving you a few facts or telling you new theory. You have to connect what you're being told to those 20 years or 15 years or 10 years of practice, which affect how you behave and what you think of yourself and how you interact with your colleagues. So it's well accepted that the basic way in which all professionals learn, including teachers, is by reflecting upon their own practice, rather than being told new theories. They can reflect upon their own practice. They can also reflect upon other people's practice, and that can widen what they can learn from. Secondly, I think it's important that they have a chance to apply their existing knowledge and take their existing experience and apply it to new contexts and new problems. I mean, that's how adults, that's how professionals learn. They already have a lot of knowledge that they have to bring to bear on new problems, and from that they learn. Thirdly, we need to recognize how social this kind of lifelong learning is, that we learn with our organizations, that we learn through the networks we have, we learn with the communities we're in. It's very difficult for us to change our behavior and to change our views if we're not supported by our communities. If you train a teacher and they go back into their school with a new set of practices, but nobody in the school takes that up and they're not supported by their colleagues don't change their behavior, the research demonstrates that they just don't continue with their new practices. They just can't sustain a new way of teaching if none of their colleagues change their patterns. So it's critical, if a school wants to support change, that schools work in teams, that change is supported and confirmed and recognized by the school. Where we got to 1, 2, 3, 4. Fourthly here, I think it's absolutely obvious to all of us how important emotional and tacit issues are, as well as cognitive and explicit. More and more we know from neuroscience, so we know from theories of learning, how important emotional factors are to our learning. How we effectively learn habits with our bodies and with our subconsciously, and how these are so important for our behaviors, professional behaviors such as teaching or any other professional activity. So if we want people to learn new forms of teaching, new technologies, new pedagogies, we have to take these into account. And the final point I want to make is about personal development and about autonomy and about professionalism. Teachers are grown-ups and they need to be in charge of their own learning. They can't just be told what to do, what to learn. They won't do it. They have to be able to shape their own learning. They have to be able to set their own goals. They have to be able to monitor their own learning. And to some extent, they need to do that collectively and not just as individually, because we know that their learning is very much affected by who they're learning with and what other people are doing. So I think these are important points to remember when we're thinking about what kind of professional development teachers want to experience. Next slide, please.
Sorry.
Can I have the next slide, please, Filippo? Yeah, thank you. And just a few thoughts really about the special situation of lockdown, which in some ways has been a really interesting opportunity to study how teachers have learned, because indeed we've seen an enormous amount of teacher learning under the lockdown. We've seen, for example, how they've had to adapt their existing skills and knowledge to new ways of teaching using, online technologies, and that implies a difference in the manner in which you're teaching. We've seen that they've had to, instead of learning face-to-face, which is their preferred mode of learning, they've had to learn online. They've had to have professional development online. And in fact, I was a little bit surprised by the poll earlier, because in the countries we've studied, we found that a lot of teachers, a very high percentage of teachers, have actually engaged in CPD over the last 12 months because there's been so much online CPD. I mean, the vast majority of teachers have had online CPD in the last 12 months. But we know also that they learn a great deal from their peers. And as I say from our surveys, we know that teachers get about as much, at least as much support from other teachers when it comes to learning to teach online as they do from formal online programs. We can also now think of teachers as being online workers. And we know generally from studies of online workers that online workers regularly need to extend and renew their knowledge. If you're working online, technologies and processes change, tasks change, and you need continual updates to keep up with them. And teachers are now online workers, or they will be until the lockdowns end. And I think one of the most exciting things is that this generation of teachers, our generation of teachers, have had an opportunity to try to solve some totally new pedagogic problems. I mean, a lot of the things that we've been teaching, nobody knows how to do that online. And we've had an opportunity of trying to solve that problem. A lot of the problems, of course, are not solved. I mean, we still are not very good at teaching practical subjects online, but it's a great challenge to us. And of course, these big challenges are opportunities for learning. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'd like to say a few words about what we can call the school-based professional development coordinator. Now, as I understand it, about half of your schools have such a person. This is the idea that someone in the school takes the responsibility for the coordination, the planning, the delivery, the evaluation of professional development. So it's not just something that happens at regional or national level, where teachers are given opportunities, but it's something which is coordinated at school level. And the first issue is perhaps whether there is a defined post for this, or whether it's just a function which is assigned to a vice principal or to some other senior teacher in the school. Quite a lot of the schools get away with that. They just add it to someone else's responsibility. In general, it tends to get less attention and be less well done if it's just one more function that is added to someone else's brief, rather than if you have an identified person who is known and is identified, who is trained to perform that responsibility. But what kind of things do they have to do? Well, normally they're expected to do needs analysis, which is to identify the training requirements of all the staff in the school, and usually they're expected to on the basis of that, to write what's called a workforce development plan or a school development plan for the training. Now, quite often this is required. It's written into the regulations that this should happen. The problem is that it quite often does happen, but that's all that happens. What I mean is that the school-based coordinator does indeed find out what the needs are. They interview people, or they do surveys. They add up all the needs, and they put them in the plan. But there isn't there's no resource, or there's no time to actually meet those needs. So the plan is sent off to the ministry or something. Theoretically, the ministry is supposed to take account of all those plans in order to plan training nationally, but that in fact these plans are not used all that much, and in fact it can be a little bit of an empty exercise, a bit of a formal exercise. Usually this is because the school doesn't actually have a lot of resources dedicated to actually provide. So I think there's a bit of a concern here that if you're going to do needs analysis, if you're going to create a plan, then it needs to be linked to reality. There should be resources to implement these trainings, or perhaps you need to have a lighter touch on your needs analysis if you know that you're not actually going to have the resources in order to meet these needs. Another key role of the school-based coordinator very often is mentoring of beginning teachers. This is a terribly important role, because beginning teachers may only have a theoretical preparation from university, and it's only in school for the first year that they may really learn to teach. We find here there's a bit of a problem often with overload. Often there are just so many beginning teachers, it's very difficult for the one coordinator to mentor them. Sometimes the coordinator hasn't been trained. Sometimes there's an issue about those beginning teachers would really need some sort of mentoring from teachers who are teaching the same subject as they're teaching, and clearly a single teacher is not able to do that. So there are issues around improving, I think, the quality. And that I think is a critical, and perhaps we should be thinking of the school-based coordinator more as being someone who's coordinating a mentoring role, which is spread across a relatively large numbers of teachers. Observation is perhaps something which is growing. In general, we find that widespread observation of teachers is quite limited. It tends to be something which is formally done by the principal once or twice a year. It's not something which is used. I mean, where observation is frequent in those countries where there's a lot of observation, it's found to be something which can be really supportive, where a trusted peer is able to observe a colleague and give them constructive support, which is not part of an appraisal, but which is much more part of supporting their teaching, identifying their training needs, helping them to have some kind of objectivity on their own teaching. And then, of course, supporting what individuals are trying to do, helping them to plan, helping them to find opportunities. And lastly, they're organizing training events and activities in the school. How much time do they get for this? Usually not enough. Sometimes they might get half a day per week, sometimes less, sometimes more. When I say they might get that, what I mean is they wouldn't be expected to be teaching. They might get some time out of teaching in order to perform that function. They need professional training. They don't always get that, but in some countries there is professional training for them. And also it's important that there's some scope for a career. In other words, that on the basis of having done this job, there are other opportunities they can go on for. And the woman that you see on the right-hand side of the screen, who is called Alexandra Lalic, she indeed is an interesting case because she started as a school-based coordinator at a school in Montenegro, and she's now progressed to be the national coordinator for school-based coordinators and for professional development. And one of her jobs is indeed to run a network for school-based coordinators. And that's the last point I want to make, is that school-based coordinators need to be able to learn from one another and to get ideas and to get support from one another. And a network for them is a key way, I think, of helping them to achieve that. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm a little bit worried about time. I'll try and press on a little bit more. Am I okay for time, Valentina?
You have the last 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I better speed up or something. So, just a couple of words I want to say about collaboration. Increasingly, we know that collaboration between teachers is as important for their learning as formal CPD. Why is that? Because you get the learning when you need it. You don't have to wait 3 months till you go on your course. You can collaborate routinely with teachers who are close to you or maybe a little bit further away digitally. And there's research which shows that collaboration helps to improve what's called efficacy, teachers' belief in their own capacity to teach well. So part of the work of schools should not only be giving formal training, but designing the work in the school so there's time for collaboration. So, for example, by setting aside working hours in the school when people can collaborate, rather perhaps than people going off out of the school, so they can't actually work with one another. By giving experienced teachers a role of supporting and mentoring other teachers, by expecting programs to be designed collectively in a team and delivered in a team, by having formal ways of building in collaboration, such as joint teaching and lesson study and so forth. Next slide, please. going on from collaboration with teachers within the school, I wanted just to say a word about how important partnership with actors outside of schools is for professional development. We've mentioned already teacher placements, and we saw that amongst the participants of this webinar, that's only a relatively small number of teachers have had that opportunity. But I think increasingly it's recognized that that's very, very valuable. And in a survey that we've conducted with the Centers of Vocational Excellence in the ETF network, we found that a very large number of them are planning to try and develop teacher placements over the next few years. We also know that schools are looking sometimes to have a long-term agreement with a teacher training organization such as the university, so that over time they can get that organization to provide different training as they need it. We know that increasingly schools want to have teacher training which takes place not in the school, but in the appropriate business. So that might be training delivered by the business, or training which is delivered for the business and for the school teachers, but together in a business place. So 48% of the teachers in the ETF study had benefited from some training over the last 12 months. International exchanges and projects in twinning are very clearly a great opportunity for learning, and schools which are well organized have sessions to transfer that training across all of the teachers in their schools after the twinning and after the projects. Some schools are developing to be teacher training organizations themselves. So there are coves in both Moldova and Turkey which are setting themselves up as teacher training organizations in a specialist field, for example, in ICT, and developing courses which they're offering to other schools. And then, of course, we know there are brokerage organizations like Chambers. I hope we'll hear more about that later today, who are bringing together schools, or bringing schools and businesses together to provide training. Next, and I think final slide, please. Okay, so this is just an image of a network. This is a very simple network which was set up by a whole bunch of teachers in Albania, so that they could share as professionals what they were doing. It's a sectorally related one. I think this is plumbing, and they set it up themselves, and then they routinely shared new ideas and practices on Facebook. It was a very, very simple thing to do, but very popular, which they sustained and found valuable. Next slide, please.
Julian, sorry, we really need to wrap up. Otherwise, we don't have time for the panel discussion. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry that I went on a bit longer than planned, and I look forward to hearing from everyone else. Thank you. Goodbye.
Okay. Thank you, Julian. Thank you very much. Florian Cadlet, specialist in entrepreneurship and enterprise skills at the European Training Foundation, will be moderating the Q&A space of after each presentation. So, Florian, if you want, you can start addressing the questions.
Thank you very much, and hello to everybody. So I have a couple of questions here to Julian. I'll put two together. One from Daniel Clay, asking, why can't we see schools and workplaces as an interrelated entity and separate them, especially in the area of TVET? And a second question related to that is, are really all TVET teachers experts? So back to Julian.
Hello.
Could you hear me, Julian?
Only the first question. I heard the first question, which I can answer, but I didn't hear the second question.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so the first question is, why can't they be a single entity? In principle, they can. In principle, they can. And there were some very interesting examples from Turkey of joint campuses where a vet school shares a campus with a number of businesses. And they do, they are a single entity. I mean, they do conduct training for teachers and for employees of the businesses together. They cooperate on training, and they also cooperate in sharing equipment and strategically as well. So there are experiments like that, and that is a direction that coves can go down. Clearly, in many countries, that's difficult because of the different, the fact that schools belong to the public sector and businesses belong to the private sector. but it's, you know, it's not impossible that there could be close partnerships.
The second question was, are really all TVET teachers experts?
Well, when I said they're all experts, what I was trying to say, and I suppose I was being a bit provocative, is I was trying to say in a bit of a strong way, they're not the same as students in initial vocational learning. I mean, they're not at the beginning of their careers learning something for the first time. They haven't got the same relationship to the authority of their teachers as adolescents have. They're someone who've already been through that. They've been through a learning, they've got a diploma, they've practiced their skills for many years, maybe both in industry and in school. And we shouldn't imagine that they're going to learn in the same way as a first-time learner would. To say they're an expert is to say they already have a great deal of knowledge and many skills and a lot of kind of understanding of themselves, and we have to take that into account. Otherwise, we'll fail to. We'll give them CPD and they won't learn. I mean, just to back that up, there's a lot of evidence. If you ask teachers what's the right way of teaching, and you give them a questionnaire, they say it should be student-centered, it should be active, that they should work in groups. These are the ways that teaching is most effective. And then you ask them, and what do you actually do yourself? They say, oh, I don't do that. I use a much more traditional method myself. So there's a gap between what people think should happen and what they themselves do. You know, it's not just enough that we explain the theory to people. They've got to be persuaded, if we want them to change, that they can actually successfully take on these practices and give benefits to their learners from using them.
Two more. One is related to the coordinator for professional development you mentioned. And the question is there any research, any insight from surveys or other types of practice learning in relation to the importance of that post? Because those kind of results would be very useful for then gaining financial resources to get such a post in that center.
Well, I wish there were. I mean, I can't really show you anything from surveys or indeed, you know, any more analytical proofs to say that systems who've got these CPD coordinators, you know, do better than systems that don't. And what I can say is that our surveys show that in practice, there's about as much CPD that goes on in schools as out of schools. I mean, if you look at the hours of CPD that teachers actually get, about as much of it takes place in schools as out of schools. But what we know is that in a lot of schools, very little money and time is spent upon organizing the CPD in the schools and making sure it's of high quality. It's quite, you know, people feed back from events they've been through, or people are pulled together for some kind of sharing session. So I suppose all I'm saying is if we know how important in terms of hours the CPD in schools is, it kind of stands to reason that it's worth investing in that and trying to make sure it fits people's needs, that it's of high quality, that it's evaluated, that it meets the strategy of the school, so that, you know, it's not just kind of low quality chat, but it is actually of value. And as I say, we know that CPD, which is close to the task, which is closely related to what teachers are going to have to teach tomorrow, has a much more effect upon their teaching than, you know, occasional episodic formal workshops, which don't very closely relate to the programs they're teaching. That is proven.
Thank you very much. I think we are slightly late. I confirm that we can reply to questions we have received even after the the webinar. We can reply in writing. I've shared Julian Stanley's contact details in case somebody wants to contact him. Already we had some participants who want to share some studies. And I think, I mean, we can actually do it in the context of our cooperation. So I would just, if Florian can introduce maybe the next speaker.
Sure. Thank you, Filippo. So I'm giving the word now to Klas Talvit, coordinator of the Hälsingland Education Association in Sweden. And word is yours.
Right, thanks a lot. Well, thank you, Julian Stanley, for an excellent presentation. It feels like you can skip my one because it was so great. I'm representing practitioners. I'm dealing with vocational training every day, and in the northern part of Sweden. And so what I'm going to do is tell you some words about the daily life in our center, and then maybe not that much about competence development and so on. But as you know, we're a learning organization. Everyone is learning all the time. The students, the teachers, the trainers, the whatever. So that's our business, so to say. Let me show you. If you're not familiar with Sweden, I'm going to start with sharing. So what I represent, if you see the tower in the middle of the east coast, that's Stockholm, and then above that is a man with a violin, and that's the region I represent, the Count of Hälsingland. It's in Sweden, it's a rural. Whole Sweden is rural. It's the same size as France, but it's only 10 million people lives there, so my region is a rural part of a rural Sweden, so to say. It's but we treat the Swedes. They call us the northern, and the northern is covered by forests and rivers and wilderness, and it's focused on basic industry and agriculture and forest industry, pulp mills and things like that. So that's what we do. And I myself, I've been working with vocational training and adult education now for decades, and I've been a teacher, career counselor, principal, and I also made a couple of years in Stockholm as a director for education and director for the University Council. And in Sweden, the University Council are responsible for the Erasmus Plus program, so I know a lot about that. So, and then I can tell Filippo and Julian that one of my former colleagues at the National Agency was Sean Mendes, and I think he worked with ETF for a while. He's back in Sweden now, but
he did,
and he did a really great thing that he is a native English speaking person, and he translated everything, the National Agency websites and presentations, everything into English, and I still use that. A long time ago he did that, but I'm still using that because it's so great. As you can see here, I'm speaking some kind of Swinglish. Call it mixed Swedish and English. It's Swinglish. Right. So I represent the regional body, and we have like 10 school units, but in all kind of dealing with all kind of activities. Upper secondary level for vocational training. In Sweden, the upper secondary level schools or the vocational training and the pre-university training are combined in one school system. So they go together, and students on vocation training, in vocation training, they can decide to skip that track and then go to the university instead. It's not like in German. It's not a dual system. It's a combined system, and that's for good and bad, and another discussion. But that's how it is, and it's a 3-year program for teenagers. If you want to become something in a profession, then you have to spend 3 years studying different subjects related to your profession. What we try to do is to stay as a learning organization. We try to collaborate with the employers in our region, with the regional university, with other vocation training providers, and the cover is a way to organize all that in a clever way. Also similar to the European Training Foundation is our role as a national center for the UNIVOC. I'm a director for that, and we are collaborating a lot with other members within the UNIVOC. The headquarters is situated in Bonn, and we are regular attending their activities. Not that much during the COVID, but before. So the most common needs of our vocational training teachers are to be developed in related to professional matters, new tools, new methods, and so on, linked to their profession, and so. But in every professional program have a board with the representatives from the enterprises, and they plan together competence development, professional competence development in the board. So our teachers they go together with the other professionals to learn more about new tools and methods and so on. But what we do is that we try to find out by communication, dialogues, and so on, other topics that are important. And two hot topics right now that we discuss a lot, and where we try to develop is first of all about sustainability, and how to include sustainable development into the vocational training, and of course we have a lot of help of this UN modules, Canvas, and thanks to the cover, we have a close collaboration with the University of Gävle, and they're experts in this kind of matters. And what we do is that we organize meetings between the experts at the university together with groups of our vocation training teachers, and they discuss and develop new methods and so on. Another important thing for us when related to competence development is that we are trying to be very active when it comes to transnational collaboration. We are active in a lot of mainly Erasmus Plus funded projects, but also by Horizon and by some other research funded projects specifically for Sweden, but still a very interesting way for our vocational training teachers to learn more from colleagues in other countries and to develop issues together with others. And you can see that we have quite a lot of activities going on, and this is not all of them. There are changing and new ones. We enter new ones and we leave some, and that's an ongoing activity. But it's really important for our teachers to join and be active in this kind of projects. So, and several of them are linked to the sustainable society and the circular economy. And you've got live canvas, for example. It's a way to deal with circular economy and entrepreneurship. And, yeah, so we try to find links, and so it's a way to organize learning. But one other thing that's really important to learn more about is the conditions for marginalized group. In our case, we spend a lot of effort right now to develop new trainings for intellectually disabled students. We have a vocational training for intellectually disabled people, and we try to develop together with an organization called Europe Active. They are organizing all the sports and gym providers in Europe. We try to develop a specific training for intellectually disabled to become sports assistants, to assist personal trainers and sports leaders in their management activities. So that's also something that we are one module of the UN SDG canvas, and that's important for us. Yeah, right. So that's some short words about our activities, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience from Sweden. Very rich.
Yeah.
There is one question in the chat. I would kindly ask you to respond briefly because of the time we already spent. From Slava Malenkova, which type of collaboration is more impacting on VET, regional or international? The question is in the sense mentioned by Julian that teachers need a community for a profound engagement in retraining. So which type of collaboration is more impacting on VET, regional or international, to your knowledge?
For the students, it's more or less the local collaboration with enterprises. But for the VET teachers, they are most of them have a background from local enterprises and so on. So they know that quite well, and I feel like it's more inspiring for them to learn from others in other countries, and maybe follow discussions like the one we have right now and so on. It's more, give them more.
Thank you very much. Thanks again for sharing the Swedish case. I think we move on to the next practice. And I'm happy to give the word to Narcís Bosch, the director of the Catalan Council of Chambers of Commerce in Spain. Maybe you're muted, Narcís. Is that possible?
Muted and not with the camera off, but now I think I have both things going on.
Yes, we can hear and see you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Skillman and especially Valentina for being here. And I have, well, I'll try to show and to speak about what we do in our region and what we are, some best practices of our own and how we as a business community see this object of training. First of all, I must say we are not, I share the presentation. First of all, I'm not a teacher. I'm the CEO of the Federation of Chamber of Commerce of Catalonia, a region in the northeast of Spain. And but we deal a lot with vocational training. I am not a teacher myself, but I've been for practically 30 years member of different boards of vocational training and participating in many elaboration of vocational training plans in our country and so on. So I have a close relation with the subject, although I'm not, we don't teach, we don't train teachers, we don't run a vocational training installation, but we deal a lot with them, especially representing companies and a company point of view. We have in our region quite a developed institutional teachers training system. We have, we are in our region some 7.5 million people, and we have nearly 50,000 are teachers, 2/3 in the public system and 1/3 in the private one. In addition, we have teachers in the employment system that are mostly from private centers that tender for occupation-related teaching. And on top, we have a long life learning outside the regulated system that is almost impossible to add up. With all this, we are around 100,000 teachers or people that train students, workers, and unemployed. The official system of training teachers depends on the regional Ministry of Education that has the competencies to train the teachers inside the country framework of requirements. So we have a Spanish framework system, and it is implemented by the region. There is a continuous offer of training for teachers that run from basic security skills, for instance, to sophisticated training in equipment and training equipment and methodology. As an example, if you enter the web page of the regional minister, you find that today you can apply for 27 courses addressed to teachers of vocational training, especially for vocational training. And these are all kinds of trainings. Also, we have a strong tradition of educational improvement efforts from all sources, not official ones. This tradition has led to strong union system and teacher organizations to promote improvement of teaching quality and the progress of education as means to a better society. These organizations were able to keep a strong commitment and activity when education was not a priority for our government. Now they keep certain activity with the support of the government grants and membership fees. And last but not least, this is the education provided by private education organizations to their own teachers. Quite a lot of them are religious orders that have historically had an important role in vocational training. So we have three main sources of training for teachers on offer. Though these provided by the regional government, both online and offline, all the systems have online and offline offer. The government system is good quality but difficult to get, as there are more teachers willing to be trained than the offer available. This leads to a bureaucratic, complicated system of allocation that sometimes is discouraging. As it is a credit to improve teachers' conditions through promotions or changing workplace, the interest in participating is warranted. Not always is a match between the specific needs of the teacher and the education facility and the offer available. Provided by teacher unions and professional associations, is more focused on personal improvement than on the system needs. It is a good, although complementary offer. And then is the training provided by private vocational training providers that's usually both quality and more focused on quality of teaching needs, as can be assigned with a criteria adapted to education or organizational requirements without the bureaucratic constraints we spoke about. From a business point of view, as business representative, I must address you that we feel is needed to fulfill our aim of a TVET system oriented to foster personal development and cover businesses' needs in the competitiveness improvement. This is not against what we have now on offer, but a desire to get more focus on our needs that will revert in a better employability of students graduating and a better fulfillment of business needs. I would underline three aspects: focus, bridges, and reality. I'm not good at making acronyms, but we can find something with these three words. It is important that teachers get training that is useful for a reality where they are developing their job. Receiving training is a right of every worker. All must have access to training. Training must answer the needs of the system and be offered selectively to address specific needs of a center providing TVET, taking into account student needs, businesses' needs, and organizational needs. This last should be the first to be considered. The board of the vocational training providing centers must have a say in what training their teachers get and must listen to their context, city, business community, families, and so on. There should be an alteration of the priority of a general offer to a general body of teachers to a specific programming of training to answer a specific local speciality and other needs. Bridges. The business community and teachers must form a team to deliver quality training that gets the most of students and the system to reduce early school leavers, improve employability, and provide for businesses' skill needs. However, often the languages spoken by ones and others are different, and Google Translation doesn't offer a solution for this. We have developed a lot of training material for tutors from enterprises dealing with interns and other training students. But this is not all. We are very proud of some initiatives we developed with the help of Erasmus program more than 10 years ago that helped us to develop and provide some training that joined in the same session teachers from vocational school and tutors from enterprises. The collective dialogue and exchanges produced new alliances among them and helped understand each other's needs, and this is experience I highly recommend. TVET teachers must have a real knowledge of what enterprise is and what an enterprise is, so that they can have a constructive dialogue. That goes beyond technologies, industrial processes, and so on. Which are the constraints in a company? What can you expect? What can they offer? Staging, often in companies, is a clear help and should be enhanced by all means. And last, reality. Virtual reality is a must. It brings experiences to training that could be impossible to get by any other means. Many regions are far away from production centers, and that can show the latest technologies available, new ways of working, or new materials. Even in densely industrialized areas, this availability is very limited and cannot be used for many teachers and students. In recently finished Erasmus project, iTrace for aerospace, I prepared these reflections that I think are worth sharing with you. From a business point of view, virtual reality is a business-friendly technology. You need to train your staff and get sure students learn how to deal with it with you. If you want better results, then reskilling your workforce, train them with virtual reality. You should not wait long for availability. Many technical firms are already using it. You should ask for training providers to equip themselves and to deliver what you need. And to regional ministries of labor and education, I recommended virtual reality is needed to teach the skills companies need. The equipment is not so expensive. Technology is easy to share among schools. Companies are willing to cooperate to develop what you need. Virtual reality will help close the gap among skills provided and skills needed. And virtual reality is not the solution to all problems. Conventional teaching is still needed for many things. We should experiment with virtual reality to keep students with basic skills and also for vocational training teachers. I thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer your questions now or whenever they reach me.
Thank you very much for sharing your experience. Very rich, very interesting. There are a couple of questions. There are some in the chat. Let me take one from there directly. How do you upgrade or how do you upgrade your TVET teachers' technical skills for adopting new technologies and to align with market relevant skills in Spain?
Well, mostly it is done by two ways of staging in companies. We have a lot of agreements among companies and bed providers that allow teachers to spend some time in the company to get this new technology, to share these advances, And then also it is possible to have an agreement with a company so that students can develop part of their curriculum there, not as a dual vocational training system, but they use the facilities of the company to instead of a classroom in the institute.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There are two more questions. I think we have time for that. Both by Slava Malenkova. One, does the Ministry of Education take the role of the development coordinator as presented before by Julian? How much can the teacher unions contribute to the needs analysis?
Well, the teacher unions are part of the vocational training system. We have a vocational training system that gets the participation of businesses, workers through their organizations, being the trade unions, being the chambers of commerce, being the employers associations, and also the municipalities in the region of Catalonia. So we have a participation with all of them, and so they are in this system. Also, unions are providers of training for their members, and so teachers can get training through their training from their unions. And there was a first question I have skipped, but can you repeat it, please?
Yes, the first question was, does the Ministry of Education take actually the role of the development coordinator in the sense that, you know, as Julian described it in the beginning?
Yes, they lead this improvement, these new approaches and the new technologies and so on. It's mainly a responsibility of the ministry. But then we have also private organizations that train themselves, and so they train with their means without public support.
Okay, thank you. A last question, again from Slava Malenkova. The question had been raised before, but now it's more oriented towards the representative of industries. So which type of collaboration has more impact on that? Is it more regional or international?
I'm afraid I don't understand exactly.
Okay, I'll try to rephrase it a bit. So which type of collaboration has more impact on that? Is it regional cooperation or international cooperation? But I think in view of the representative of the industry.
I think both are important. We encourage a lot and we participate, for instance, in Erasmus schemes to help bad students to go to other countries, because and also we encourage companies in Catalonia to deal with bad providers and to have students as interns and so on. And we think that in both cases, the important thing is that the collaboration will encourage the partnership of businesses and bed providers, and this is the key to skills, upskilling people to have a quality debate, and we don't have a quality debate without the collaboration among companies and bed providers. And this collaboration is important both at regional level and at international level. At regional level, you can develop schemes very close knitted with in a region, in a sector, in a small distance. You have everything. You have schools, we have companies, we have families, and so on. So you can have an important project, and this is easier to manage. But then importing ideas from other countries is always a very good idea.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience. I think we can hand over to Filippo now, if there is no more question or no more intervention by anybody planned. It doesn't look like.
Is there anyone who would like to speak and raise your hand to give just a few comments or to ask your questions directly? If anyone. Otherwise, we move on with Filippo, as you said. I don't see any raised hands for now, Filippo.
Okay, I just have one of two points following these interesting presentations, but I would like also my colleague Florian and Julian to, if something actually has striking them, to intervene. For me, it's clear. I mean, that the opportunities that teachers have now in terms of professional development are extensive. I mean, there's a notion of opportunities in terms of local, regional, international cooperation, partnership. One thing which is very important for me is the incentive system. So you want your teachers to have some incentives in participating. That's not only means financial or career incentives, but also, I mean, professional development, playing different roles in the education system, changing the profile. So I think this is very important because the opportunities are there. I think we had a number of examples from the two presentations. So this is very important for me. And having so many opportunities, I think, is also important to have somebody like a teacher training coordinator in school or some similar profile, because it's not that complex it's not that easy to orient yourself in such a wide availability of training offers. So I think this element is quite important, because I mean, you cannot only provide opportunities, but you really need to engage the teachers. I think that the issue of the community is very important, because individual is always difficult to change things. I'm coming from Italy. We do have an issue of teacher training, and when you try to change yourself in a context which remains the same, you usually stop after a few months. So I think this point has been raised by Julian, is very much true. So before giving the word to Julian and Florian, if they want to give a final message, I would like to inform that the next webinar will actually deal with work-based learning professionals, how to actually support and strengthen the capacities of these key figures in schools and in companies. You will all be invited to participate. It's going to be in March. The date will soon be communicated.
May I say one thing?
Please, absolutely.
Yeah, I was just reflecting. I was challenged by one participant to identify research which demonstrated the value of school coordinators, and I still can't do that. But I feel the challenge. I feel a need to respond, and I was thinking that there's pretty good evidence from the analysis of PISA data, which demonstrates what's called the school effect. And what I mean by the school effect is that there's a strong difference in achievement from one school to another. If you look at performance of classes, it's not just some individuals do well, some individuals do badly, but there's a school effect. In other words, some schools get statistically better outcomes than other schools. And this has led people to believe that school improvement is important. It's not just enough to work at these teachers here. You have to get the performance of. You have to think about the performance of all the teachers in a school. In some schools, there seems to be strong practice. Teachers are supporting one another. They're building on strength together. In other schools, possibly they can't get good teachers. There isn't the know-how to share. They're struggling a bit. So that suggests that the professional development shouldn't just be teacher by teacher, but it should be coordinated across the school, and the school should be to some extent the unit of improvement, whereby the technical and the pedagogical capacities and the capacity to collaborate with the teachers is raised, and that needs some kind of coordination. It isn't going to happen randomly in a school if individual teachers are pursuing their own professional development. It can only happen if there's a strategy. If the strategy for professional development is keyed in with the strategy for school improvement, and if the school has got some means, some resources in terms of time, in terms of budget to make that happen.
Thank you very much, Julian. I think it's very important. I would like to thank all the participants and our key speakers, and Florian for the facilitation, and Valentina, of course, for all the leading of the webinar and the organization. So from my side, I would just would like to thank you and to invite you to the next webinar. Vale?
Thank you, Filippo. Again, from the Skillman team, thank you very much. Thank you to the panelists, Florian for the moderation, Filippo as well. And I would just, if there's no one else who would like to speak and give a final message, I would just give you the appointment to the next webinar in March. And thank you very much for participating. Have a great day, great evening, great night to everybody. Thank you. you.